A massive fire spirit erupts city, its monstrous face roaring as dark figures stand below. The intense heat instantly incinerates an army of dark puppets, turning them to dust in a flash. A hooded figure watches in fury, yelling that all the puppets he had been stockpiling are now completely gone. The fire spirit laments being attacked right after waking up, acknowledging that lords are truly terrifying. And suddenly, black threads shoot out and wrap around the fiery entity, restraining its immense power. The attack comes from a mysterious figure with long, sharp fingernails glowing with a sinister purple energy. And so a masked woman appears, telling the fire spirit, Dees, that she has caught it, but her companion just grunts that he knows. The old man then launches his own attack, unleashing a powerful move called Miasma Stakes. A blast of dark purple energy surges forward with incredible speed and force. The attack misses the spirit and instead strikes a golden shrine, causing a massive explosion. The hooded man boasts about being a lord slayer, but his female companion seems completely unimpressed. The fire spirit, now reduced to a tiny ghost, flees as the man yells at it not to run away, and his partner simply tells him it's his responsibility to handle it, showing she doesn't care. And the man then confirms that the Purification shrine has been properly destroyed, meaning their plan is working. He smiles wickedly, stating that a dark miasma will now spread and fill the entire island. He declares that the age of darkness for both heaven and earth is just beginning. The scene shifts to a bright, peaceful place known as the most famous island in the world, Victor Island. It is revealed that 300 years ago, this was the site of a decisive war between humanity and the underworld. Nowadays, however, the island is more famous for the prestigious Victor Knight Academy built upon it. Swords clash in the distance, a small, cheerful fairy glides through the sky above the academy towers. The tiny fairy dodges frantically through the air, trying to escape a series of fast-moving attacks. She tumbles downwards through a chaotic flurry of slashes, narrowly avoiding each one as she falls. With her back against a stone wall, she watches in terror as a bright slash of energy comes right at her. Just then, a young knight catches her on his belt, realizing with a start that he almost struck her, and so youth named Del, a second-year knight, mutters to himself that his swing was a bit too dangerous, and so holding the tiny creature in his hand, he asks where she wandered from, warning her that this place is unsafe, and he tells her that fairies are invisible to normal people, so she could get hurt if she's not careful. Unseen by the students, shadowy figures with glowing eyes watch them from the edges of the courtyard. A fairy tries to get Del's attention by tugging on his hair, but he seems completely preoccupied, and a strange, dark energy swirls around the knight's eyes as his focus shifts towards the training area. He turns and begins practicing, swinging his large sword in a wide arc across the stone ground. Suddenly, another student leaps forward and blocks his strike, their blades clashing with a loud ring. The other trainees watch in shock, sensing a strange and unsettling aura emanating from the opponent. The force of the block drives the other student's sword tip firmly into the cobblestone path. Her opponent laughs and apologizes to Del, acting as if it was a simple mistake, and so, he insists that his sword just slipped during their match, claiming the whole thing was an accident. Del smiles back calmly, telling the other student not to worry since he managed to block the attack anyway. As they walk off the training grounds, his companion casually asks who he was talking to just now. The young knight simply replies that he was just talking to himself, hiding the fairy from view. His peer warns him that talking to monsters makes someone a heretic who must be reported to the church, and Del listens silently as the other student continues his thinly veiled threat about the church, and he stands his ground, observing the strange, dark aura emanating from the student in front of him. The young knight notes the sinister energy appearing on his peer's back again, confirming his suspicion. He reflects that while the bullying has been going on for a while, these dangerous auras are a new development. The small fairy shivers behind his collar, thinking about the disgusting haze that all fairies seem to despise. Del knows that normal people can't see this dark miasma that is slowly creeping over the entire academy. He feels a growing sense of dread as the energy spreads, wondering what these strange, shadowy creatures truly are. And suddenly, a girl grabs him from behind, calling him her little brother and telling him he's spacing out again. Before he can react, she excitedly spots an opening in his stance, startling him with her sudden movement. He recognizes the girl as his sister Marina, as she dashes through the training yard, cheered on by others. Marina rushes toward him with a determined look, explaining that his big sister has been worried about him. Del grits his teeth and raises his sword to block her incoming attack, insisting he hasn't done anything. Their blades meet with a sharp clang as he explains he's just trying to stay quiet and keep to himself, and so she quickly grabs his sword arm, telling him that his tendency to keep a distance is the root of the problem. Marina points out that his top-tier swordsmanship and constantly calm attitude can be misunderstood by others. She explains that his behavior might come across as unpleasant or sarcastic, which makes him look annoyed, and she then complains that he has been avoiding even her since he started at the academy, making her feel lonely. Leaning in closer, she asks where he always sneaks off to by himself after school and during the holidays. He looks away, saying he just goes to quiet places to relax and that he'd only be in her way. As he speaks, a group of Marina's friends can be seen nearby, waving and cheering for her. Marina pauses for a moment, thoughtfully considering her brother's recent distant behavior. Then, she suddenly gets in his face, accusing him of hiding a secret girlfriend from her. She playfully attacks him while he falls back, exclaiming that there's no way that's true. Their siblings' squabble echoes through the otherwise quiet stone corridors of the academy. After a moment, she pulls him into a headlock, saying she'll let him off the hook for today. Her playful demeanor fades, and she asks him seriously if anything has been making him anxious lately. He looks away, a faint wisp of dark energy lingering near him, completely unnoticed by his sister. The young knight insists that nothing is wrong, trying to brush off her genuine concern. She holds his hand, not entirely convinced by his answer, and looks at him intently. And she then tells him that if he opened his heart more, people would see all his good points. He seems genuinely touched by her words, his blue eyes widening slightly in surprise. She waves goodbye, dismissing her concern as just being a busybody, and turns to leave. A small smile appears on his face as he watches her go, admitting to himself that she got him. And he thinks that his older sister, Marina, seems to be able to see through everything he tries to hide. So his expression turns somber as he wonders if he'll ever be able to tell her he's a heretic. He turns to the small fairy still with him, suggesting that she should also return to her home. The creature points at the dark energy, and he asks if that miasma is what destroyed her home. In response, the tiny fairy lands on his head and begins throwing a frustrated, silent tantrum. He sighs, realizing she has nowhere to go, and tells her to follow him instead. Dell leads her away, promising to take her to a secret place that not even his family knows about. He leads the small creature down hidden paths, passing a waterfall before arriving at a secret stone archway. The little fairy seems exhausted from the journey, barely hanging on as she rests atop his head. And so the young knight smiles as they finally reach their destination, a place of peace hidden from the world. As they enter, the fairy's eyes go wide with wonder, amazed by the beautiful sight before her. She flies through a vibrant garden, filled with colorful flowers and a clear, gentle stream. He explains that this is his secret back garden, a safe place filled with many of his friends. The youth adds that the miasma hasn't reached this place yet, but his new companion is already playing with other fairies. And so, rolling up his sleeves, he calls for their help, announcing that it's time to build more homes for them. The garden is a small, walled sanctuary with a cozy cabin and a large tree creating a peaceful haven. Just outside the entrance, however, the dark web, like miasma, constantly tries to seep through the cracks. The sinister purple energy pulses and spreads, like a living disease trying to infect the pure ground. A shadowy, clawed hand forms within the darkness, slowly reaching towards the light of the hidden sanctuary. The young man grabs a sack and a trowel, ready to begin his work of maintaining the garden's purity. He tells the fairies they are in charge of watering as he begins to replant some of the flowers. Two small fairies carefully use leaves to pour water droplets onto a new bloom, just as he instructed. As they work, the positive energy of the garden seems to push back against the encroaching darkness. But the miasma fights back, its shadowy tendrils pressing against the invisible barrier with more force. After some time, the youth wipes sweat from his brow, feeling a sense of accomplishment from his work. He stretches his arms, deciding that what he's done today should be good enough to hold the darkness at bay. However, he notes with concern that the miasma seemed to have increased on his way to the garden. He watches the encroaching darkness, his gaze filled with a deep, unspoken worry for his hidden sanctuary. Suddenly he shouts for a fairy named Wren, telling her not to be so rough with the newly planted flowers. And so the youth explains that these normal flowers are incredibly delicate and need gentle care to grow properly. Meanwhile, another fairy relaxes peacefully in a small hammock, unaware of the miasma creeping up behind her. And the young knight turns his head, sensing a new presence has entered his secret garden. Shadowy tendrils of the dark energy reach out, getting dangerously close to the sleeping fairy. A large beast-like creature steps in the clearing, noting how the garden is filled with pure mana. Its arrival is marked by a sudden intense burst of fire that scorches the air, and sleeping fairy is thrown from her hammock by the force of the explosion, startling everyone. Dell rushes over to the newcomer, asking if it's alright after sensing the sudden flare of flames. His face is filled with concern as he runs towards the spot where the creature landed. He finds a large cat-like beast covered in wounds, lying exhausted in a patch of clovers. The knight and the small fairies gather around, their eyes wide with shock and worry for the injured animal. He sighs, thinking that first a stray fairy appeared, and now a stray cat has found its way here. Far away from the garden, a bell tolls from the highest tower of the Victor Knight Academy. The hooded man sits there, commenting that his prey has run around quite a bit today. With a sinister grin, he states that he has finally cornered the small creature of flame, and he vows to blow away the piece of burnt ash with a single breath, finishing the job he started. And the world he seeks to corrupt is a bright and lively place, full of youthful energy and hope. But beneath its noisy and beautiful surface, a monstrous darkness waits to consume everything. The beast recalls its intense desire to enter that beautiful world, a stark contrast to its monstrous true form. The next morning, the small creature wakes up inside the cabin, resting in a wooden box. Del had brought it inside the shed for the night, letting it rest safely on a small table. Feeling refreshed after a long sleep, the beast carefully steps out of the box. So, it makes its way to the cabin's entrance, gazing out at the bright morning light. A huge yawn escapes its mouth before its eyes snap open with excitement at the view. The entire garden is alive with activity as the fairies tend to the flowers and play. Unable to contain its joy, the creature leaps from the cabin's porch into the garden. It lands with a clumsy roll in the grass, laughing happily as it sends dirt flying. The energetic beast then dashes around a tree stump decorated with small potted plants. It dives headfirst into the soft earth, startling a couple of the nearby fairies. After a moment, it pops its head back up, sitting proudly among the colorful flowers, and the creature rolls onto its back, playfully kicking its feet in the air with pure delight. It seems completely at peace, gently sniffing a flower with a content expression on its face. Del approaches with a gentle smile, wishing it a good morning and asking if it slept well. The beast confirms that it rested well, which makes the young knight happy to hear. A moment later, however, Del's cheerful expression shifts to one of complete shock. He falls backward, exclaiming that the cat can talk, which clearly offends the small creature. With several fairies clinging to him, the youth tries to explain that he was just surprised, and he says he never met a talking fairy, but the beast retorts that it is of a much higher rank. The small beast decides there is no other option but to reveal its true identity to the human, so it leaps onto a tree stump, announcing that it will give a special introduction, much to the knight's surprise. The creature sits down while Del and the fairies gather around, ready to listen to its grand declaration. The young man seems completely unimpressed, even as a bright golden light starts emanating from the speaker. Suddenly, the light explodes into a massive burst of flames, forcing everyone to shield their eyes. With a flaming paw swiping forward, the creature proudly declares itself the great and mighty Lord of Fire. It roars its name as Agni, its body now wreathed in powerful flames and its eyes glowing intensely. While the fairies cheer excitedly at the fairy spectacle, Del remains completely unfazed by the display. He simply asks what a mischievous cat fairy could possibly want, which greatly offends the Fire Lord. The youth says Agni can stay if it helps maintain the garden, but the Lord protests doing manual labor. Del glances at the dark miasma on the wall, explaining that he needs all the help he can get. Agni asks why he works alone and if he has any friends, which prompts Del to threaten to kick it out. A voice from the miasma offers its power for an offering, suggesting a cat toy, but the knight refuses. The entity then clarifies its preference for human food, especially meat, piquing Agni's curiosity. Just then, a shadowy snake-like creature emerges from the darkness, startling one of the fairies. A loud thud rings out, causing Del to cry out in distress while holding a wilting flower. He whips around with a worried expression, asking what that noise was while a fairy clings to his shoulder, and before him stands a large, purple serpent that has slithered out from the tainted wall of the garden. The young knight draws his sword and cautiously approaches the intruder, asking what happened, and so he then shouts for everyone to get back, preparing to face the new threat that has breached his sanctuary. Del calmly dismisses the creature as just a snake, preparing to remove it from his garden. But as he tries to pick it up with his sheathed sword, the serpent suddenly wraps itself tightly around the blade. Multiple snake heads made of dark energy erupt from the creature's body, surrounding the surprised knight. He instantly recognizes the familiar, sinister energy, realizing what this creature truly is. With a powerful swing, he throws the corrupted plant pot away, shattering the miasma's hold. The dark energy dissipates for a moment, revealing the ordinary garden wall behind it. Suddenly, a massive twisted tree of pure miasma grows from the ground, towering over him. The knight prepares himself, holding his blade at the ready to face this much larger threat. He glares at the monstrous tree, but just as he's about to attack, someone calls out to him. Agni places a paw on his head, telling him to stop before he does something reckless, and the Fire Lord explains that without the power of purification, he cannot hope to harm the miasma. Del looks at the dark entity, finally understanding the true nature of the enemy he's been facing. Agni prepares to unleash its own power, confident that its flames can purify the corruption. It lets out a massive roar of fire, engulfing the twisted tree in a powerful purifying blaze. The miasma creature writhes and shrieks as the intense flames burn away its dark form. The young knight shields his face from the intense heat of the fiery attack, cursing under his breath. Small embers of fire rain down from the sky as the miasma tree begins to crumble under the assault. Agni watches as the tree stubbornly resists, noting that it managed to block the first attack. With a determined look, the young knight clenches his fist, ready to step in and help, and his eyes glow with a faint purple light as he prepares to use his own hidden power against the threat. Hidden within the trunk of the miasma tree is a glowing, skull-like core, its weak point. Del urgently tells Agni that he can see the center of the miasma near the creature's branching roots, and the Fire Lord is impressed that the youth can see through to the miasma's core, praising his excellent eyes. After learning the knight's name is Del, Agni forms a plan to take down their enemy together. The Fire Lord tells Del to get into a position to attack the core, promising to finish it in one blast. And so the miasma entity warns them that if they touch its branches, their life essence will be drained away. Del accepts the risky plan without hesitation, ready to face the danger to protect his garden. With Agni clinging to his head, the young knight charges forward, ready to execute their strategy. He runs straight towards the monstrous tree, dodging the dark tendrils that lash out to stop him. With his sword drawn, he expertly cuts through the shadowy branches that try to block his path. He leaps and dodges with incredible agility, weaving through the chaotic assault of the miasma. Using a low slide, he slips under a sweeping attack, getting ever closer to the creature's core. He unleashes a spinning slash, clearing a path through the dense web of dark energy around him. The miasma tree suddenly shifts its defenses, creating a thick barrier of tendrils to protect its core. One of the branches manages to strike the young knight, knocking him off balance for a moment. Seeing the danger, Agni tells Del that they need to retreat for now before he gets seriously hurt, but the youth refuses, his hand now caught in the tight grip of several dark, string-like tendrils. With a furious look, he declares that he won't let them destroy his precious garden. He unleashes a burst of his own dark energy, his voice filled with rage at the destruction. Ignoring Annie's call to retreat, he points out that the core is now right in front of them. With a final determined roar, the small Fire Lord unleashes the full extent of its power. A powerful flame purification roar erupts, sending a massive wave of fire toward the miasma. The intense heat incinerates the dark, corrupted energy, leaving nothing but scattered ashes behind. Del sits on the scorched grass, wondering if he truly managed to purify the garden with the creature's help. And so he looks at the aftermath with a serious expression, embers from the attack still floating in the air. As Agni's paw limply rests on his shoulder, the knight asks if this is what it calls miasma. Suddenly the Fire Lord collapses and Del quickly catches it, asking if it is okay. The creature weakly explains that it used up too much of its life essence during the attack. It laments that with the purification shrine destroyed, even that small flame was too much to handle. The small beast takes a weak sniff of the air, sensing the purity of the garden around it, and so Agni notes that the secret garden is filled with good life essence, which will help it recover. Del explains that life essence is born from lands treated with compassion and overflowing with vitality. He reassures the weakened creature that if it rests here, it will recover its strength soon. The young knight smiles, relieved that his new companion will be alright after the intense battle. He sits peacefully in the grass with the fairies, thanking the Fire Lord for saving his garden. Agni turns away with a huff, muttering that for a human, he did an acceptable job. It then gets up and demands an offering instead of words, insisting on the food that humans eat. The youth looks exasperated, surprised that the creature still remembers their earlier conversation. Agni insists that meat would be a good offering, repeating its demand with newfound energy. The sun sets over the academy walls as Del sighs, agreeing to get it food at the dorm later. As the sun sets, the small Fire Lord waits impatiently in the darkened garden, resting on a tree stump. It lifts its head, sensing that the person it has been waiting for is finally returning after a long day. Agni stretches and complains Del took too long, demanding that he hurry up and bring the promised offering. Suddenly Del appears in a blur of motion, his presence so intense it seems to warp the air around him. The young knight moves with incredible speed, practicing his sword forms with a determined look on his face. He trains relentlessly under the setting sun, his blade cutting through the air and fallen leaves. Each step and swing is filled with a desperate energy, pushing his body and skills to their absolute limit. He knows that his sword alone was useless against the miasma that invaded his secret sanctuary. The youth questions if he truly has the power to protect the place and the fairies that are so precious to him. He wonders if he will have to stand by and watch as everything he cares about is taken away from him. Meanwhile, the Holy Light Lorate Church despises heretics for their ability to connect with non-human beings. Their greatest fear is a heretic's potential connection to their sworn enemy, the long-defeated Underworld King. But over time, these reasons have been forgotten and heretics are now simply branded as bringers of misfortune. Back at the academy dorms, smoke rises from a chimney, signaling that dinner is being prepared for the students. The dining hall is bustling with activity as the young knights gather to eat after a hard day of training. Del sits down with his meal, looking slightly surprised by the variety of food on the trays. Two students quickly get up from a nearby table, apologizing for sitting at a senior student's spot. The young knight continues eating, but his meal is suddenly interrupted by a familiar presence. So his sister Marina appears behind him with a mouthful of food, admitting that she's been caught. She happily waves off her friends, telling them that tonight is reserved for family time with her brother. Del sits with his sister, a dark aura of gloom hanging over him as he eats his meal in silence, and so he realizes with a sigh that he never thought he was this disliked by the other students at the academy. Marina chuckles, reassuring him that it's not that he's hated by everyone around him. She then brings up the rumor that he is known as the Solitary Knight, which leaves him confused. His sister explains the persona others have created for him, a flawless swordsman with an enigmatic smile. The young knight is completely bewildered by this description, wondering how he got such a reputation. Two imaginary versions of Agni appear, mirroring his own confusion and helplessness at the situation. He asks his sister how he is supposed to make friends, admitting he has no idea where to even start. She bursts out laughing at his honest question, finding his complete social ineptitude quite amusing. After composing herself, she suggests that sharing important secrets can help people become closer. He immediately questions this advice, wondering if sharing secrets would just lead to being hated or avoided. Marina pauses for a moment to think, taking a thoughtful bite of her food as she considers his point. With a sly smile, she asks if he has a secret that he can't tell anyone, her curiosity piqued. He quickly denies it, but she playfully offers to guess what his big secret might be. The youth tries to stop her, but she interrupts him before he can get a word in edgewise, and she teasingly declares that his big secret is that he's in love with his older sister. And Dell gets up to leave, telling her to enjoy her meal as she quickly insists that it was just a joke. She reassures him that no matter his secret, she would accept it with open arms, so he shouldn't worry. He simply agrees as his sister notices the large amount of food he's taking with him from the table. The knight stammers that the food is just provisions before quickly running off, leaving his sister suspicious. She recalls a time when her brother was hiding 16 hungry cats and gave them all his food, nearly collapsing from hunger himself. The memory of his past kindness makes her doubt that he is truly taking all that food just for himself. With renewed determination, she decides to find out what her brother is truly hiding from everyone. He knows that his sister has always reached out to him, offering a light in his darkest moments, and she has been by his side ever since he arrived as a new member of the family at just 6 years old. He carries the heavy burden of being a heretic, wanting to prove himself worthy of his family's trust. But he's afraid that revealing his secret will cause him to lose that trust and his family for a second time. With his lantern in hand, the young knight makes his way back to the hidden entrance of his secret garden. He considers asking the cat fairy for advice, hoping she might have some answers for his dilemma. He calls out to Agni, but his cheerful greeting is cut short by a look of pure horror on his face. The secret garden has been utterly destroyed, its vibrant life now replaced with decay and destruction. He stares in shock at the devastation, a silent scream caught in his throat at the sight of his ruined sanctuary. A sinister, hooded figure appears at the entrance, a dark miasma swirling around him in the dim light, and so the stranger greets the young knight, commenting that it's not good for a kid to be wandering around at night. The dark figure raises a hand, his red eyes glowing menacingly from beneath the shadow of his hood. The intruder then claims he is not a suspicious character but is simply disciplining a pet that ran away, and the young knight's eyes fall upon the bruised and beaten body of Agni, lying motionless in the grass. The hooded man then asks if he can see anything suspicious, his voice dripping with sinister amusement. With his face hidden in shadow, the youth quietly asks the stranger if he is responsible for this. The man simply replies that he can't have the boy seeing him before launching a surprise attack. The hooded figure confirms he destroyed the garden, adding that Agni had previously burned all his puppets. He decides to stock up on new puppets here and unleashes his miasma stakes attack once again. The young knight stands his ground, his silhouette framed by the light of his lantern in the dark archway. His face is obscured by shadows, a silent rage building within him at the intruder's words. With a swift movement, he throws his lantern aside and blocks the incoming attack with a dark, corrupted blade. The hooded man is surprised by this, wondering where the young knight suddenly disappeared to. He's then shocked to see his attack completely nullified by the strange, dark energy of the blade. The knight rushes forward, his sword glowing with a sinister purple light as he closes the distance. He appears right in front of the intruder, ready to strike back with all the force he can muster. The youth stands over the defeated man, his dark sword resting on his shoulder as miasma swirls around him. He turns his head, his eyes now glowing with a strange, otherworldly light after the intense battle. He quickly rushes to Agni's side, asking if the small Fire Lord is alright after the attack. The creature weakly complains that Dell was slow and that the promised offering still hasn't arrived. The young knight smiles, relieved to see that his new friend is still able to complain despite its injuries. He asks Agni who the mysterious attacker was, but the Fire Lord simply dismisses him as an annoying guy. Just then, a footstep echoes from the stone path behind them, catching their attention. A familiar voice calls out Dell's name, and he turns to see his sister standing there with a lantern. He is completely shocked to see her here, stammering her name and asking what she's doing, and she explains that she was worried when he went out at night, so she decided to follow him. Her eyes then fall upon the strange, corrupted sword still lying on the ground from the fight. Dell panics and tries to send his sister away, but the hooded figure is still lurking in the shadows. Agni warns him that their enemy is not yet defeated, his voice filled with urgency and concern. The intruder rises from the ground, boasting that his body is covered in miasma, making him immune to attacks. With a sinister grin, he unleashes his miasma stakes again, this time aiming directly at Marina. The young knight screams for his sister to get back as the dark energy surges towards her. He watches in horror as the miasma strikes his sister, a look of pure terror on his face. She drops the lantern and the fish she was carrying, her body now shrouded in the sinister purple energy. He calls out her name, but a dark, hooded figure appears behind him, ready to strike. And before he can react, the intruder orders him to kill the girl, his voice cold and commanding. And so the figure clarifies that he should kill the person who has just been turned into his puppet. And suddenly, Marina attacks her brother, her eyes now glowing with a malevolent red light. He is forced to defend himself, questioning why his sister is suddenly attacking him so fiercely. Her body is now completely controlled by the miasma, her movements swift and relentless. A dark energy radiates from her, her face hidden in shadow as she presses her attack. He desperately tries to reason with her, telling her to snap out of the dark influence. The intruder laughs, explaining that once his miasma stake hits, the person becomes his puppet. The young knight is now on the defensive, struggling to fend off his sister's relentless assault. He knows he can't bring himself to hurt his sister, his mind racing for a way out of this desperate situation. He dodges another attack, but his hesitation leaves him vulnerable to her next move. As his sister's blade comes down, he closes his eyes, unable to bring himself to counterattack. Just as her corrupted blade is about to strike him, Marina manages to regain control for a moment. With blood trickling from her mouth, she struggles against the miasma's influence and tells her brother to run. He calls out her name, his eyes wide with a mix of shock, fear, and desperation. Agni's paw hits the ground with a determined thud. Unable to stand by and watch any longer, the Fire Lord leaps on Adele's shoulder, exclaiming that it can't bear to watch such carelessness. With a powerful roar, the small creature unleashes another blast of purifying flame from its mouth. The intense fire engulfs Marina's body, and Del can only shield his face and hope for the best. Marina's shocked by the sudden burst of fire, her mind still clouded by the miasma's dark influence. The flames throw her back, and Del quickly rushes forward to catch his sister as she falls. He holds her unconscious body while Agni reassures him that it only purified the miasma. The young knight looks down at his sister, then back at the Fire Lord, demanding to know what just happened. He stares at the small creature, his eyes filled with a mix of confusion, gratitude, and awe. He calls out Agni's name, still processing the incredible power the small Fire Lord possesses. The intruder reappears from the shadows, surprised that the young knight had a hidden card left to play. Del holds his unconscious sister, while Agni sits before them, its body still glowing with residual flames. The small creature's energy is clearly depleted, its fiery mane flickering weakly after the powerful attack. And so the young knight calls out to Agni, his voice filled with concern for his new and powerful ally. He kneels on the ground, holding his sister tightly as the Fire Lord stands guard before them. A massive, corrupted blade materializes in front of them, wielded by a shadowy new figure. Agni glares at the new threat, its body still glowing with a faint, protective flame. He looks down, a scratch on his cheek, feeling the weight of the impossible situation he's in. The small Fire Lord speaks, its voice weak but filled with a newfound determination to fight back. The young knight looks up, a fire in his eyes as he listens to his new ally's desperate plan. Agni declares that it will lend him its power, a risky move that will require a deep connection between them. He smiles, a strange and unsettling look on his face as he accepts the Fire Lord's dangerous offer. The creature's face transforms into a being of pure flame, telling Del to see its true form with his special eyes. And so with his unique vision, the youth should be able to see into the depths of the Fire Lord's soul. A blinding light erupts as Agni calls to him, its true monstrous form beckoning him from the darkness. The creature reveals its massive, powerful body, a being of pure energy and untamed flame. So it tells the young knight that it will take him to a place beyond human comprehension. Agni extends a hand, and Del reaches out to accept, forming a pact between human and Lord, and a surge of power flows between them, their essences merging in a blinding flash of colorful light. The connection is made, their souls now linked in a desperate gamble to save everything they hold dear. The intruder watches as a massive wave of fire erupts, forcing him to shield his eyes from the intense heat. He looks on in a mix of shock and fear, a single drop of sweat rolling down his face. The young knight is now wreathed in powerful flames, a fiery crown on his head and a lion of fire roaring above him. And the scene then shifts to a rough sketch of a sinister, red-eyed figure, hinting at the true enemy behind the scenes. Now wreathed in powerful flames, the young knight confronts the hooded man. A fairy lion roars above him, showcasing his newfound power, and he feels an intense heat burning from within his body, a sensation of untamed energy coursing through him. The intruder is thrown back by the sheer force of the flames, his face a mask of pure terror and disbelief. The youth briefly looks down at his unconscious sister, Marina, who lies amidst the fiery ground, reminding him what he's fighting for, and he calls out her name, his voice filled with a desperate urgency, trying to reach her through the chaos. but the hooded figure glares back with defiance, his red eyes burning with rage despite the overwhelming power before him. The intruder raises his hand, unleashing several streams of dark miasma toward the young knight in a last-ditch effort. The boy grabs the small Fire Lord Agi, preparing to face the incoming assault together with his new ally. They stand firm as the purple energy surges towards them, the Fire Lion's aura acting as a protective shield. The hooded man pushes forward, channeling all his remaining strength into the dark tendrils of miasma. He scoffs at the display of power, convinced that such a bluff will not work on him, underestimating the boy's resolve. A massive explosion erupts as the divine flames clash with the dark miasma, lighting up the entire area. The youth stands his ground amidst the inferno, his body now a conduit for the Fire Lord's immense power. Flames lick at his skin, but his determined gaze remains locked on his opponent, feeling the surge of energy. The intruder is knocked to the ground, forced to look up in fear at the figure towering over him, now engulfed in flames. He trembles on the ground, his face contorted in a mix of shock and desperation as he faces certain defeat. The hooded figure opens his mouth wide, revealing rows of sharp teeth and a monstrous, inhuman snarl. His hood falls back, revealing a grotesque, bald head with a sinister expression, his tongue lolling out. The young knight clutches his head, recoiling slightly as if struck by a psychic or sonic attack from the foe. He quickly recovers his stance, the fiery lion roaring behind him once more as he prepares for the final blow. The young knight stands firm with the Fire Lord's power, a single bead of sweat on his face showing the intense strain of the battle, and his opponent responds by gathering a swirling vortex of dark miasma, his sinister grin widening as he prepares to unleash his full power. The intruder declares that he can't afford to hold back any longer, channeling all his corrupted energy for a final, desperate attack. He then lunges from above, his body shrouded in a torrent of purple miasma as he screams and descends upon the boy. And so the young warrior shields his face, bracing for the impact of the overwhelming dark energy crashing down on him. Instead of retreating, he extends a hand forward, preparing to meet the powerful attack head-on with his own strength, and he successfully intercepts the descending strike, the sheer force of the impact sending shockwaves through the ruined garden. The villain's face appears to crack like glass from the force of the block, yet his maniacal grin remains fixed in place. And so now, the young knight stands on the fiery ground, looking up at his foe who still hovers above, enveloped in a dark aura. A wave of miasma suddenly lashes out, striking the youth and forcing him to stumble backward from the powerful blow. He uses the momentum to flip backward through the air, unsheathing his sword as he creates distance between them, and his hand grips the hilt tightly, the simple steel of his sword now his only weapon against the monstrous figure. The two opponents face each other once more, the intruder wielding a corrupted dagger against the knight's plain sword, and so his enemy's twisted reflection stares back at him from the blade's polished surface, but his determined expression does not waver. Believing the boy needs time to build power, the intruder decides not to wait, launching a barrage of miasma attacks. The young warrior grits his teeth and raises his sword, preparing to defend against the relentless assault. A strange X-shaped mark is now visible on the intruder's forehead as he grins, confident that his attack will succeed. The boy holds his ground, successfully using his sword to block a large tendril of dark, corrupted energy. He then pushes forward, slicing through the miasma and landing a clean cut directly on the villain's arm. The man stares in shock at his wounded arm. He believed his miasma armor was invincible without the Fire Lord's flame. A memory flashes, showing a younger Dell cursing in frustration as he holds a cracked and worn sword, and the scene reveals he was fighting the same hooded figure even back then, struggling against the dark miasma. In that past battle, he was pushed to his knees, but his grip on his sword remained firm and defiant. Back in the present, the Fire Lord roars, urgently telling the young knight to look at his sword. The boy's eyes widen in shock as he sees the reflection of his corroding blade within his own pupil. He looks down and confirms it. The intruder's miasma is eating away at the very steel of his weapon. And the villain simply chuckles, smugly admitting that the young knight has finally caught on to his tactic, and he adds with a sinister grin that it doesn't matter, as it will not change his impending doom. Agi tells him that trying to wield its power directly is like grabbing a raging inferno with his bare hands. The youth looks at his own hands, realizing the immense toll the divine fire is taking on his body. He cries out as he blocks another attack, his corroding sword finally shattering from the overwhelming force. The Fire Lord leans in close, shouting words of guidance directly into his partner's ear. Dell listens, clutching his chest as he focuses the raw, fairy energy into a glowing orb in his palm, and his opponent watches this display with a twisted and eager grin, ready for what comes next. The boy looks at the broken hilt in his hand, now glowing with the intense, molten energy of the Fire Lord. The scene flashes back once more, showing the intruder easily overwhelming the younger knight in their past duel. But in the present, Dell raises the broken blade, determined to finish the fight at any cost. A memory of his previous defeat surfaces, kneeling helplessly as his enemy prepared to strike him down. The villain lets out a roaring, maniacal laugh, absolutely certain of his victory. His blood-red eyes narrow with cruel anticipation, believing the fight is already over. The intruder holds two broken daggers coated in miasma, his eyes wide with madness as he promises the end is near. But his triumphant grin quickly turns to shock as he is suddenly engulfed in a powerful torrent of divine fire. Del stands firm, his broken hilt now wielding a brand new blade forged from the pure flames of the Fire Lord. So he then unleashes a volley of fireballs shaped like roaring lion heads that hurtle directly toward his enemy. And the young knight remains perfectly calm and focused, holding the fiery weapon as he channels the immense power within. With a confident smile, he finally understands how to properly grasp and control the incredible Lord's flame. His opponent's eyes widen in pure terror as the divine fire begins to scorch and purify his corrupted body. The villain screams in defiance, convinced such a hastily learned trick cannot defeat him, and begins a new chant. With his arms spread wide, he summons a massive cloud of dark purple miasma, attempting to counter the attack. But the youth swings his fire sword, sending an arc of flame that cuts through the darkness and strikes the man. Del's expression is firm. He states he has seen enough of the intruder's tricks and is ready to end the fight, and so the villain can only watch in stunned silence, barely managing to comment on the incredible speed of the attack. With Agni roaring beside him, the knight shouts that he alone will decide the outcome of this battle as he charges forward. Completely surrounded by the inferno, the intruder weakly reaches out a hand, pleading for him to wait. The young warrior unleashes his final attack, the blade of heavenly fire, consuming his foe in a pillar of light. And so as he burns away, the man screams that this is only the beginning and vows that everything will become his. In the quiet aftermath, Del stands alone under the stars as the ominous words, "Underworld King," linger in the air. He finally kneels, exhausted from the battle, while Ag, back in its small form, remains faithfully by his side. After a moment, the young knight gets to his feet and slowly walks away, his back turned to the viewer, and hiding under a large leaf, two small fairies peek out, yawning after being disturbed by the intense battle. With the battle over, the young knight and his Fire Lord companion are surrounded by playful fairies under the starry sky. But his happy expression quickly fades as a look of pure horror crosses his face, a sudden and terrible memory resurfacing. He remembers his sister Marina, lying unconscious on the ground, her face marked by the dark miasma's curse. The weight of his failure washes over him, and he sits in despair while the small Fire Lord watches him with concern. Eiji's expression is serious and determined, ready to help his new partner face the challenge ahead. And so the small creature looks down at the unconscious girl, sensing the lingering corruption within her. And so the young knight's eyes are wide with fear and desperation as he recalls the state his sister was left in. And the scene shifts to the exterior of a quiet building under the full moon, where they have taken refuge. Inside a room, a woman in a lab coat is tending to the boy's wounds as he sits quietly. She dabs a cut on his face, skeptically asking if all this was just from a little sibling quarrel. The youth, now bandaged and bruised, forces a weak and unconvincing smile, trying to hide the truth. The two sit in the dimly lit room, the shelves filled with books and medical supplies around them. The woman suddenly smacks him, annoyed by his recklessness, and declares that his treatment is finished, and she points at him, likely giving him a stern lecture about taking better care of himself in the future. Meanwhile, Marina is shown sleeping soundly in a comfortable bed, safe from the immediate danger. The boy bows deeply, thanking the woman for her help. She simply smiles, commenting on his youthful energy. She then leaves the room, closing the heavy wooden door behind her, leaving the siblings alone. He immediately rushes to his sister's bedside, calling out to Eiji, who is perched on his shoulder. He anxiously asks about Marina's condition, and the Fire Lord reports that a faint amount of miasma still remains. Determined, the young knight declares they must purify it again, summoning a small flame as Eiji agrees. He summons a small, controlled flame preparing to purify what remains of the dark energy. Carefully he places the purifying fire on his sister's chest as Eiji watches from the foot of the bed. The divine flame burns brightly, working to purge the dark miasma that has taken root deep within her. But the purification suddenly fails. The youth coughs up blood from the backlash, asking why it did not work. Eiji explains the miasma is stronger than expected and has penetrated her soul. A forced cleansing could destroy it. Marina's sleeping face shows signs of a struggle, her brow furrowed in discomfort from the internal battle. The two companions sit quietly by the bedside, the room filled with a heavy silence as they watch over the girl. The Fire Lord adds that the miasma will slowly consume her life essence before spreading further. Hearing this, the young knight clenches his fist in frustration, his face a mask of grief and helplessness. He listens as his companion continues to explain the dire situation they are now facing. Eiji then reveals its true form as tattered and weak, admitting it has lost almost all of its original power. But the Fire Lord assures him that its ability to purify miasma remains the same, even in its weakened state. The creature returns to its small form, steam rising from its body, clearly exhausted from the brief transformation. The boy takes in this new information, his expression serious as he processes the gravity of their circumstances. The room is quiet again as he stares down at his sister, the weight of his responsibility pressing down on him. He sits on the edge of the bed with his head bowed, feeling completely powerless to help her. With Eiji on his shoulder, he remarks that despite their small age gap, she always insisted on being the big sister. A flashback shows a younger him being adopted into the Martial Knight family when they were both 6 years old, and so recalls how the young girl, with a bright smile, reached out her hand to him when they first met. But at that time he was unable to trust anyone and turned away from her kind gesture, leaving her standing alone. He recalls his past, remembering that he couldn't trust anyone because his real parents had abandoned him. But a young Marina was always persistent, even climbing through his window to try and get him to open up. She always insisted on being his big sister, constantly staying by his side and pulling him into her world. Back in the present, he admits to himself that her constant presence was, at times, annoyingly persistent. He looks at his sister, the dark marks on her face a grim reminder of the poison still deep within her. So with Eiji on his shoulder, the young knight turns from the bed, his expression filled with a new resolve. A determined smile forms on his face as he finally makes a difficult but necessary decision. Just then, another young knight with glasses enters the room, looking surprised by what he sees. Dell listens intently as Eiji explains a possible, but incredibly dangerous, solution to save Marina. The small Fire Lord speaks with conviction, proposing a risky plan that is their only hope, and the youth looks at his bandaged face in a moment of reflection, contemplating the difficult path ahead. He and his companion share a moment of silent understanding, both knowing what must be done. With a firm gaze, he accepts the Fire Lord's dangerous proposal, ready to face any consequences for her sake. He gently pulls the covers over his sister, making a silent promise to return and save her from the curse. And having made up his mind, the young knight turns and walks towards the door to begin his mission. He opens it and steps out into the hallway, leaving the quiet, dimly lit room behind him. As he leaves, his sister appears to be sleeping peacefully, unaware of the choice he just made. However, once the door is closed, her eyes flutter open, showing she was awake the whole time, and so she wonders how long he'll make her wait, then wishes him a good night, her faith in him unwavering. Meanwhile, in a dark chamber, a shadowy figure sits near a purple flame, hinting at a much greater evil, and the scene shifts to a dark chamber, filled with an oppressive and sinister purple aura. An imposing armored figure with a horn helmet appears, summoned by two large, shadowy hands. Before this powerful being, the hooded subordinate from the garden kneels in submission. It is a woman with pink hair and a purple mask, hiding from the piercing gaze of her superior, and she nervously sweats under her hood, her eyes filled with fear as she prepares to report her failure. The woman bows deeply, pressing her forehead to the cold stone floor in a gesture of complete deference. She looks up with a pleading expression, her voice trembling as she awaits judgment for her mistakes. And shadowy, monstrous hand suddenly reaches out and grabs her with immense force, lifting her from the ground. And the dark leader coldly asks who gave her permission to make excuses for her failure in the garden. She apologizes and reports that Dees was defeated, nervously promising to take responsibility for the Lord of Fire. But he strikes her down, stating that he has already made his move and her efforts are no longer needed. The armored leader stands surrounded by his followers, all kneeling silently in the dark chamber. He turns his back on them, his shadowy cape flowing as he dismisses their presence, and his heavy armored boots step forward, each movement echoing with immense power and authority. The leader's monstrous form writhes with dark energy as he prepares to unleash his master plan, and so kneels at the center of his followers, acting as the nexus for their dark ritual. A sinister red seal cracks and spreads, signaling that a powerful and widespread curse has been activated. Meanwhile, the scene changes to a grand castle on a hill, the prestigious Academy of the Night Order. Dell walks through the academy halls with Eiji on his shoulder, drawing stares from the other students, and so the small Fire Lord playfully clings to the boy's head, trying to lighten the mood as they move through the crowd. Dell stops in the middle of the crowd, his attention suddenly caught by a commotion up ahead. A beautiful young nun appears, and the students gasp in awe, recognizing her as the legendary Holy Woman. The woman maintains a calm and serious expression, her gaze sweeping over the crowd with a focused intensity. And so, peeking through the students, Dell looks on with a mix of surprise and nervousness, with Eiji perched on his head. The Holy Woman recalls a divine vision where a spirit named Lucia warned that a heretic was heading to the academy. In that vision, she was given a clear and solemn command to eliminate the person who would bring calamity. She closes her eyes for a moment, quietly accepting the difficult mission bestowed upon her by the divine light. Opening her eyes with firm resolve, she vows to follow the guidance of the light, no matter the cost. Back in the present, the Holy Woman walks gracefully through the academy grounds, her presence commanding respect. She holds a pendant to her chest, her simple nun's habit adorned with a belt bearing a mystical symbol. Her expression is thoughtful and melancholic, hinting at the heavy burden she carries on her shoulders. And so, the young knight's eyes widen as he seems to notice her looking directly at him through the crowd. And so, the students whisper in excitement, wondering if it's true that she can hear the voice of the divine Lurite. Unable to see, Eiji complains from atop Dell's head, urging him to move forward for a better view. Suddenly, a fully recovered Marina appears behind him, pushing him forward while telling him to go on. In her excitement, she accidentally stumps on his foot, causing a small drop of blood to appear. She leans in close to his ear, her voice a loud whisper that makes him flinch in anticipation. The young knight suddenly screams out in pain, his voice echoing through the courtyard from her action. Marina immediately bows with her hands together in a gesture of apology for whatever she just did, and she then explains herself with a cheerful but slightly embarrassed expression as her brother reels from the pain. Marina, now fully recovered, asks if she hit her head after their fight, then quickly apologizes for hurting him. He smiles, remarking that it's unusual for her to be so apologetic, which leaves her looking flustered. The young knight leans in closer, his intense gaze making her blush as she thinks he's being a bit forceful. Their moment is interrupted when an old man in a purple coat rudely shoves his way through the crowd. The man kneels before the holy woman, introducing himself as Easy Warwin, a candidate for vice principal. The saintess gives him a polite and gentle smile, her hands clasped together in a serene gesture. But her smile quickly fades, and both Easy and the students behind him look on with shocked expressions. From a distance, Del watches the scene unfold with AG perched on his head, his expression unreadable. The holy woman's sharp gaze cuts through the crowd, seemingly locking onto someone specific. Del suddenly starts stretching, claiming it's just morning exercises when Marina asks him what's wrong, and the saintess ignores Easy completely, her attention elsewhere, prompting him to ask what she is looking at, and she walks right past the vice principal candidate, who can only watch in confusion as she moves through the students. As she gets closer, other students begin to whisper amongst themselves, their fearful gazes fixed on Del, and they express their fear of heretics being nearby, hoping they will be crucified for their differences. Marina overhears their cruel words, her expression hardening as she listens to the prejudice around them. Del clenches his teeth in anger, wondering to himself if being different from others is truly a sin. His sister looks at him with a worried and supportive expression, sensing his inner turmoil. A group of girls greets Marina, but Del stands awkwardly to the side, clearly ostracized by the others, and she watches him with concern as he stands alone, separated from the rest of the students. With AG on his shoulder, the young knight's expression becomes one of defiance, ready to face their judgment. The holy woman's gaze remains fixed and intense as she scans the crowd for the source of the disturbance, and so she seems to be looking right at the young knight, her focus unwavering even among the other students. Later, inside a sunlit classroom, the day's lessons begin as usual for the academy students. Professor Easy recounts a tale from 300 years ago when the underworld king devastated half the land, and so he passionately explains that the king was finally destroyed right here on Victor Island by the god of light Lurite. The professor adds that the holy woman of light, who was granted divine power, was also key to the victory. Del seems completely unimpressed by the lecture, while his Fire Lord companion has fallen asleep on his book. Nearby, some of the other students exchange confused glances, seemingly lost in the historical lesson. The professor, completely absorbed in his own lecture, fails to notice the classroom's new arrival. The holy woman appears at the back of the lecture hall, her sudden presence startling all the students. She smiles gently, but her eyes are sharp and focused, scanning the room for a specific target. And Professor Easy is overjoyed, fawning over St. Lucia and asking if she could put in a good word for him. And Del panics and tries to hide AG under his book, letting out a small scream of alarm. But the holy woman's expression shifts. She senses the presence she's been searching for is close. As she walks down the aisle, the young knight desperately whispers for his companion to hide himself. AG protests from inside the book, indignantly stating that is a god and this is ridiculous. And sudden burst of divine energy, however small, immediately catches the saintess's attention. She stops directly in front of his desk and points, her voice clear as she calls out to him. But at that moment a small shadowy creature appears behind her, and she gasps in surprise. Her focus shifts instantly from the boy to the new, unexpected threat that has just appeared. Del tries to look inconspicuous, but the holy woman turns and asks what the shadowy creature was. A student in the front row suddenly stands up, asking if she is here on a heretic hunt because he has a lead. The saintess turns to him, her expression calm and unreadable as she listens to his eager offer. She then smiles gently and tells the student to meet her in private later to discuss the matter further. And so before he can celebrate, another student points his finger aggressively, shouting that he has found the heretic. His accusation is aimed directly at Del, who looks up in complete shock, not expecting to be singled out. The young knight's face is cast in shadow, the unwanted attention making the situation even worse. The holy woman's sharp gaze lands on Del, observing him closely as the accusation hangs in the air. He sits frozen at his desk, his face blank as he tries to process what is happening around him. A single bead of sweat rolls down his face as he panics, wondering what he should do now. But Marina quickly stands up and shouts in his defense, ready to protect her brother from the false claims. The accuser ignores her, listing as evidence that Del talks to empty air and has unnatural abilities. He turns to the holy woman, trying to convince her that his suspicions are correct and action must be taken. Del looks down at his desk, a nervous sweat covering his brow as he endures the public scrutiny. The saintess then walks over to him, her face unreadable as she leans in close and touches his pendant. A bright star-like symbol flashes in her eye as she uses her divine power to see the truth. At that moment, small tendrils of dark miasma begin to rise from the very student making the accusations. The boy misinterprets her actions and celebrates, thinking she agrees with him about Del being suspicious. The holy woman simply brings a finger to her lips with a knowing wink, as if sharing a secret with him. The student's triumphant expression turns to one of pure shock as he realizes he is the true target. With a swift motion, the holy woman creates a sword of light and strikes the accuser, purifying the miasma around him. and so Del and his companion watch in complete shock, unable to believe what just happened in the classroom. The student is thrown backward by the force of the holy light, his body now free from the dark influence. The saintess smiles sweetly and explains she was simply purifying the annoying miasma he was emitting, and so the other students are in awe, exclaiming that they just witnessed a miracle, a sword made of pure light. A student asks in disbelief if everyone saw the display of power, while Del watches from behind, holding Ag. His companion explains her life essence is so strong it manifested as matter, calling it the true power of a god. The holy woman then steps onto the podium, calling for everyone in the classroom to listen to her. She confirms that it is true she came to the academy searching for heretics, causing a stir among the students, and Del listens intently from his desk, his expression serious as he awaits the rest of her announcement. However, she reveals she followed a divine oracle which instructed her to protect the heretic, not hunt them. With her sword of light still in hand, she points directly at Del, identifying him as the one she seeks. And so the students murmur in confusion, wondering why the church would protect someone meant to bring calamity. The young knight wonders if he is the heretic she's looking for, confused by her intention to protect him. And so as the academy bell rings in the distance, the weight of her words hangs heavy in the air. The professor nervously informs the saintess that the class is ending, but she seems lost in thought, and she thinks to herself that she can still feel a strange presence nearby, a powerful life essence with a burning heat. She is now certain that the heretic from her divine oracle must be someone within this very classroom, and so with a bright smile, she tells the teacher that while on her mission, she has become very interested in the academy. The other students look on with admiration, completely captivated by the holy woman's charming presence. Professor Easy is thrilled at the prospect, eagerly agreeing for the holy woman to observe his evaluation. The young knight sits in class with a serious expression, thinking that this is a completely unforeseen situation, and the scene then shifts to an outdoor training ground where an instructor orders the students to line up for sword practice. A muscular instructor with an eye patch announces that the holy woman and Professor Warruin will be observing today's training, and so he passionately urges everyone to show their spirit, but Del looks less than enthusiastic about the sudden pressure. The saintess sits under a pink parasol held by the professor, offering a gentle wave and a blessing for their safety, and so, several of the male students are immediately smitten by her presence, while the young knight looks annoyed between them, and so one student wonders if he could become her personal knight if he shows off, but his friend calls him an idiot for the idea. Marina and another female student watch from the side, with his sister remarking that boys are stupid and chivalry is ridiculous, and the instructor begins the session, telling the students to start with some basic practice swings to warm up. But Professor Warruin suggests a different activity that he thinks the holy woman would enjoy more, exciting the students. The boys immediately get competitive, pushing to go first and dedicating their victories to the saintess. And his sister grabs his arm, telling him he'll miss his chance to appeal to her if he keeps spacing out. The young knight simply says he'll pass, showing no interest in competing for her attention. Marina looks at him with a curious smile, noting his complete lack of interest in the famous holy woman, and she then playfully suggests he should make a grand declaration, like becoming the greatest knight king, which confuses him, and she quickly dismisses it as nothing, turning away with a cheerful expression, leaving him puzzled. He stands apart from the others, his expression serious and detached from the surrounding excitement. From a distance, the young knight watches the saintess, who sits peacefully under her parasol. The holy woman keeps a gentle smile on her face, but her attention seems to be focused on him. The training session begins with the sharp clang of practice swords clashing against each other, and students pair off and engage in sparring matches on the stone courtyard, their movements quick and focused. Professor Ruin smugly asks the holy woman for her opinion on the academy's strength, and she agrees it's impressive. A particularly aggressive student is highlighted, known for his sword talent that is recognized by the academy. He leaps into the air, bringing his practice sword down with incredible force on his opponent. The other student blocks the attack, then declares he will not surrender and prepares a final, all-out move, but his opponent simply smirks, calling him a fool for his predictable and honorable tactics. Instead of clashing blades, he suddenly drives his sword into the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust and sand. He tells his opponent to play by himself as he blinds him with the dirt, leaving him completely vulnerable, and so with his opponent disoriented, he swiftly kicks him to the ground, ending the match in an instant. He stands victoriously over the fallen student as the others watch, shocked by the dishonorable move. The winner boasts that using any means to win is his personal form of chivalry, telling others not to call it cowardly. Del watches the display from the sidelines, his expression filled with clear disapproval and disgust. The holy woman also observes the outcome, her face remaining calm and neutral, giving nothing away, and so she then approaches Marina and asks if that student is the strongest among the boys in the class. Marina hesitates, but another girl wonders if Del isn't actually stronger than the victor. This makes Marina proudly declare that Del is definitely the strongest, boasting about his incredible instincts. So hearing this, the Saintess's interest is piqued, and she states that she would like to see this person's skill. Marina immediately gasps, covering her mouth as she realizes she may have just put Del in a difficult position. The victorious student overhears their conversation, his red eyes glaring as he listens in on them, and the student taunts Del from afar, calling him a coward who is afraid to show his pathetic self to the holy woman. Marina gasps in frustration, whispering her brother's name as she watches the bully's cruel words unfold. The student continues his mockery, pointing a finger and further trying to provoke a reaction, and he then directly calls out Del Marshall, his voice dripping with arrogance and disdain. The young knight simply scratches his head, annoyed that his name has been called out so much today. The bully vows to crush his smug face in front of the Saintess and wipe his calm expression away, but Del simply closes his eyes and concedes the match, refusing to give his opponent the fight he wants, and the student is enraged by this, complaining to the holy woman that Del always runs away from a challenge. Del turns to walk away, but the bully makes a final, cutting remark about his family's pathetic name. The young knight stops dead in his tracks, his eyes widening as he slowly turns back to face his tormentor. The bully freezes in shock, a bead of sweat on his face as he sees the sudden shift in Del's demeanor. The holy woman also senses the change, her expression turning serious as she watches the scene unfold. With his face hidden in shadow, Del coldly states that disparaging another's family name is forbidden for a knight, but the student just smirks, claiming he was only stating facts, showing no remorse for his words. Marina tries to hold her brother back, urging him not to fall for such a cheap and obvious provocation, but he remembers how his adoptive father taught him the sword as a son of the Marshall house. His sister watches him, her expression a mix of worry and understanding as he makes his decision. He can't stay silent when his family's name is insulted, and he steps forward with firm resolve. A fire of determination burns in his eyes as he finally accepts the challenge, ready to defend his honor. His opponent grins, satisfied that he finally got a reaction, welcoming Del to the fight. So the holy woman announces that she will give the signal to start the official match between the two students. The bully glares at Del, admitting he's been irritated by his smug and special attitude for a long time. The young knight reflects on his own behavior, admitting he has worried others with his detached attitude, but this time, he declares with a fierce expression that he will crush his opponent face to face, and Saintess looks on with wide, curious eyes, ready to begin the duel and see his true strength. With a confident grin, Del gets into a ready stance, his practice sword held firmly in his hand, and the two opponents face each other, their swords locked in a test of strength as the match begins. The bully presses his attack, using his superior strength to push Del back across the stone courtyard, and Professor Ruin explains the Danamon sword style is all about intuition and overwhelming the opponent with attacks. The student taunts his opponent, asking where the bravado from before has gone as he continues his assault. Marina watches with a worried expression, calling out her brother's name as he struggles against the barrage. The bully mocks Del for being overhyped, but the young knight calmly explains he's using an old, hand-me-down sword, and his opponent calls his reason pathetic, accusing him of making excuses even now that the fight has started. A small, confident smile appears on Del's face as he simply says no, he is not making any excuses. He suddenly drops low, throwing his opponent off balance with an unexpected and swift maneuver. The student cries out in pain as he is thrown, his shoulder likely dislocated from the surprising move, and so Del calmly regains his footing while his opponent is still disoriented from the sudden reversal. In a bizarre move, he then opens a pink parasol and uses it to hold his opponent at bay. Marina cheers excitedly, shouting that he did it, while the holy woman watches with a small, intrigued smile. Professor Waruin quickly clears his throat, pretending he predicted this exact outcome all along. As the instructor is about to declare Del the winner, the defeated student protests, claiming the match is invalid, and so argues that simply placing a sword at his neck doesn't mean anything in a real battle. Del calmly points out that this is just a match, but his opponent scoffs and insults his father's honor, and the student boasts that in his family, they always train assuming it's real combat, looking down on the academy's rules. With his eyes wide, the young knight simply says he understands and agrees to continue the fight. Marina watches with concern, recognizing that her brother has now been pushed completely over the edge. The bully taunts him, saying not to expect his luck to continue as they prepare to fight again. Without waiting for a signal, the opponent kicks up another cloud of dust, using the same dirty trick as before. Del is momentarily blinded by the sand, but his expression remains calm and unfazed by the cheap tactic. His opponent rushes in, shouting not to call him a coward as he prepares to strike with a dagger. He lands a solid punch, declaring that this is how one fights on a real battlefield, with no rules or honor. But as he tries to follow up, he finds his arm is caught, wondering why his attack was stopped. The bully looks down to see Del on the ground, his sword pointed directly at his forehead. The blade is just inches from his eye, and he freezes in pure terror at the sudden and complete reversal. The young knight explains that in the Marshall family sword technique, they train to fight even when blinded. He keeps his calm smile, his eyes closed as he demonstrates the skill passed down through his family, and the sword is embedded in the ground just beside his opponent's head, showing his incredible precision and control. Now Del stands victoriously over the defeated student as the rest of the class watches in stunned silence. This time, the instructor officially declares Del Marshall as the winner of the duel. The other students now mock the defeated bully, who cries in humiliation after losing with his own dirty tricks. The defeated student is in disbelief, consumed by a dark aura of shame as he realizes he has lost. He calls his own performance a shameful display, a disgrace to his family's name and honor. A memory flashes back to his childhood, where his own father called him a loser and disowned him. His father's words echo in his mind, telling him to win at any cost, even if it means fighting dirty. The holy woman suddenly shouts a warning as a surge of dark miasma erupts from the defeated student, and driven by desperation, the student lunges at Del, declaring that winning is his only form of chivalry. Marina screams for her brother to dodge the sudden, unexpected attack from his corrupted opponent. Del turns in surprise, his eyes wide as he senses the dark energy rushing toward him. A flash of fire appears in his eye as his instincts kick in, reacting to the immediate danger. In a burst of flames, he raises his own sword to meet the incoming attack head-on. The corrupted student looks on in shock as his opponent's blade is suddenly engulfed in purifying fire. The saintess watches the display with wide, curious eyes, intrigued by this new development. The young knight is also shocked, looking down at his own hand, not expecting the sudden surge of power, and his flaming sword effortlessly slices through his opponent's iron blade, which now lies burning on the ground. The other students are in awe, realizing he was hiding his true strength the entire time. Marina lets out a sigh of relief, apologizing to him for worrying about the outcome of the fight. In a private moment, Del scolds his Fire Lord companion for using its power in front of the entire class. He realizes there is no way to hide his abilities now, even if the class thinks it was just sparks, and so worries that being called a heretic right now would be incredibly bad for him and his family. But the holy woman simply claps her hands with a bright smile, calling it an excellent match. The holy woman takes Del's hand, praising his final strike that cut through iron as particularly impressive. With a bright smile, she calls his swordsmanship magnificent and asks for his name once more. He introduces himself as Del Marshall, still looking a bit confused by her sudden praise. She then turns to the defeated student, kindly telling him that he also fought very hard. She warns him, however, that he seems to attract miasma easily and must suppress his negative feelings. With a gentle smile, she assures him that he won't need any more purification from her. She then turns back to Del and suddenly places her hands on his chest, much to his surprise. He lets out a shocked gasp, completely flustered as she gets unexpectedly close to him. Marina screams at them from the crowd, calling their actions indecent and too early for her to witness. Eiji warns him that the holy woman is probing him, trying to find the source of his power, and so Del immediately jumps back, trying to create some distance from the overly friendly saintess. She simply smiles, complimenting him on his wonderfully trained body and his perfect defensive stance. He stands ready, his posture showing no openings or gaps, proving his skill as a knight. She then adds that since the match was for her, she must properly respond to the victor. He quickly tries to refuse, insisting he didn't ask for anything, but she is determined to fulfill his hopes. The holy woman then officially appoints him as her personal attendant knight, shocking everyone present. Later, she gives him a tour of the academy, starting with the nice and relaxing salon. They then visit the spacious dining hall, its grand chandeliers and long tables empty for now. Finally, they step out onto a balcony with a breathtaking view of the surrounding landscape, and she enjoys the nice breeze while he stands beside her, still looking a bit bewildered by the day's events. Suddenly, the balcony railing crumbles and Del instinctively grabs the holy woman to pull her to safety, and he holds her wrist tightly, his quick reflexes preventing her from falling from the collapsing structure. She smiles, impressed by his protective instincts, and comments that he is already acting like her knight. He gets flustered and dismisses his actions as nothing, wondering how the situation escalated so quickly. The memory of her appointing him as her personal attendant knight flashes in his mind, still causing him shock. Marina urges her brother to accept the great achievement, but he seems hesitant about the sudden responsibility. The young knight politely declines the offer, explaining he has already decided to help his father after graduation. His sister and the other students look on in disbelief, shocked that he would turn down such a prestigious honor. The holy woman's smile fades, and she asks if her begging him is not enough to convince him. He is taken aback by her sudden change in tone, stammering as he tries to find the right words. But she quickly giggles, admitting that her jest may have gone a bit too far this time. Del is left completely confused by her playful and unpredictable behavior, unsure how to react. She then clarifies that the personal attendant knight role is only for one day to act as her tour guide. He finally understands the situation, a look of relief washing over his face as the pressure is lifted, and she takes his hand and tells him to escort her, declaring that for today, he is her knight. With a nervous sweat, he agrees, now officially bound to her side for the remainder of the day. As they walk, he asks if a simple tour is enough, but she doesn't seem to understand his question. She assures him she will search for the heretic, but reveals there is one more thing she must find. He asks what it is, and she tells him it must be kept a secret from everyone else in the academy. She then leans in and whispers that hidden somewhere in the academy is the Great Seal of Light. He whispers back, asking if she shouldn't be searching for the heretic she is meant to protect. The young knight's eyes are filled with a mix of confusion and curiosity, questioning her true motives, and she assures him she will search, but first, she must find something else Sama asked of her. Their conversation is interrupted by one of her guards, who rudely pulls Del away from the holy woman. The large, armored knight tells him to get away from the saint, but Del is more confused by his sudden appearance. The holy woman tries to de-escalate the situation, but the guard has already revealed her secret mission, and so the knight explains that he was strictly instructed by the church to check on the condition of the Great Seal. She apologizes for her guard's behavior, explaining they were assigned by the Victor Church as high priest, and Del dismisses the incident, saying it's natural for them to be protective if they are guarding her. The saintess looks at him with a gentle expression as he humbly takes the blame for getting too close. Changing the subject, she brings up his exceptional swordsmanship from the match earlier. He tries to downplay his skills, but she insists she understands his true motivation. She tells him it's not about talent, but a desperate reason he had to become strong, a fierce determination in his sword. He hesitates for a moment before deciding to tell her the truth about his past and his family. He reveals that he was abandoned by his real parents for a certain reason, then adopted by a traveling knight, and his new father raised him as his own son, treating him like a real member of the family. To repay that debt, he wants to become a knight and help his father's work, which is why he trains so hard. And he then admits that the truth is he's afraid of being abandoned by his new family all over again. As he apologizes for the long story, she quietly tells him that she is the same as him. He looks at her in surprise as she reveals that she was also an abandoned child for a certain reason. Del is completely shocked, unable to believe that the revered holy woman was also an abandoned child. She explains she was kicked out of an orphanage and had to survive alone, fighting thugs and picking pockets. With a confident smile, she asks if her past makes her unfit to be the holy woman. He is speechless, admitting he has never heard such a story about her before, and she tells him it's a secret because it would damage her image, which is why the world doesn't know. It was the god of light, Sama, who ultimately saved her from her life on the streets. She recalls being cornered by thugs and about to take her own life when the divine intervention occurred. A warm light descended and saved her, giving her a new purpose and a reason to live. But she admits that at the time, she was so angry that she cursed the very god that saved her. She understands his desperation to repay his debt, as she feels the same determination to repay hers. He looks at her with a newfound respect and understanding, simply calling her holy woman. A small, knowing smile appears on her face as they share a moment of mutual recognition, and she then points to a painting on the wall, a file that she needs his help with. It is a painting of an accolade ceremony where one officially becomes a true knight. Since she has appointed him her knight, she suggests they go there right away for the ceremony, and she then officially appoints him as her light knight, but only for one day as they previously agreed. He smiles and humbly accepts the honor, agreeing to serve her for the single day. She performs the ceremony, tapping his shoulder with her sword as he kneels before her. He admits that it's a great honor to receive such a ceremony from her, even if it's temporary. But a sudden realization hits him, and he looks up with a shocked and confused expression. He argues that such a sacred ceremony shouldn't be treated as mere play, questioning her seriousness. Suddenly, one of the armored guards attacks, swinging a massive sword down at Del and the holy woman. The guard's powerful strike shatters the stone floor, the force of the blow sending debris flying everywhere. Del asks if this is some kind of test, but the holy woman looks just as surprised by the sudden assault. She quickly pushes him back, her expression turning fierce as she senses an unknown presence. And so massive corrupted knight covered in miasma now towers over them, its presence overwhelming. The monstrous figure's helmet cracks, revealing a grotesque and sinister face underneath. Del realizes this is too heavy a burden for a one-day knight as he prepares to face the new threat. Elsewhere, Marina suddenly clutches her chest, feeling a sharp pain as if sensing the danger, and her friends ask if she's okay, and she reassures them she's just feeling a bit dizzy. But her friends tease her, suggesting she's just worried about Del and the holy woman corrupting him. She lets out a frustrated sigh, annoyed by her friends' playful but insensitive comments. She admits that something feels unsettling in her chest, a premonition of the danger her brother is in. Back in the chamber, a giant purple slime monster with glowing green eyes appears before them. Both Del and the holy woman are shocked, wondering what kind of powerful miasma this creature is made of. The monster quickly envelops one of the guards, who screams for the saintess to escape the ambush. She watches in horror as her guards are consumed by the miasma, unable to fight back against the creature. Del shouts that he is coming to help, drawing his sword and rushing towards the monster, but the holy woman stops him, telling him to step back as this is now her responsibility. She declares that as the holy woman, she must protect not only the oracle's heretic but everyone else as well, and so she holds her sword of light, explaining it's her duty to protect all people who are bathed in the divine light. And the young knight watches her, his eyes wide with a mix of awe and admiration for her unwavering resolve. She tells him she doesn't need assistance, her body glowing with a powerful and protective aura. With a graceful leap she dodges a barrage of star-shaped projectiles, her movements fluid and precise, and she lands with a smile, telling him she has been used to this kind of danger for a long time. He looks on in surprise, completely taken aback by her incredible display of skill and power. The slime monster tries to absorb another guard, but the holy light purifies the miasma on contact. Its mouth opens wide as it prepares to unleash a powerful attack directly at the holy woman. But the attack is nullified, and the creature looks on in shock at its own incredible destructive power. The saintess is unfazed, admitting a hostage is troublesome but questioning if it's meant to intimidate her. A star flashes in her eye as she asks if the monster's estimate of her power is a bit too low. She launches her own counterattack, shattering the creature into countless crystalline pieces with a single strike. One of the guards is freed from the monster's grasp, but his body is still partially covered in the purple slime. The rest of the creature is thrown back by the force of the attack, crashing against the far wall, and she lets out a sigh of relief, admitting that appearances can be deceiving after all. Del is speechless, unable to follow her movements as she defeated the monster in a single instant. Meanwhile, the real enemy is revealed to be in a dark, underground chamber, far from the battle, and so he notes that while his clay puppets were shattered, they successfully delayed the holy woman. He then turns his attention to a massive, sealed door, believing what he seeks lies beyond it. A dark, corrupted hand crackles with purple energy as it reaches out to break the powerful seal. He notes the powerful barrier must be from Lurit's power, just as his guide had predicted. He then pulls out a strange, ornate mask and urges it to break the accursed barrier. Using a talisman of darkness, he channels a massive amount of purple energy into the sealed door. Back in the main hall, a bright light suddenly erupts, momentarily blinding everyone present. The holy woman realizes that an unforeseen situation has occurred and she must find the barrier's location. She and Del now stand before the shattered remains of the slime monster, its form slowly dissipating. The young knight's senses are on high alert, his eyes darting around as he anticipates the next move. The saintess asks him if he knows of any suspicious places within the academy that she should investigate. But before he can answer, he spots a new threat and shouts for her to watch out behind her, and he pushes her out of the way just as another slime monster crashes down where she was standing. The fragments of the creature she shattered before are now reassembling into a new, more powerful form, and so the monster taunts her, admitting she did a number on it earlier, shocking Del that it can talk. It boasts that it now has time to play and challenges her to show her light's power against its miasma. Realizing there are no more hostages inside, she prepares to test her full strength against the creature. The monster splits into multiple smaller versions of itself, all lunging toward her at once. She declares her blade of light severs all miasma, using the power granted to her by Lurite Sama, and the creature seems to be enjoying the fight, its confident expression unwavering as it presses the attack. It reforms into a single, massive entity and brings its powerful fist down upon the holy woman, and she meets the attack head on, her sword of light clashing with the miasma in a brilliant flash. Del calls out her name in concern, but she assures him that she is fine and not to worry. She identifies the creature as a mud-like miasma, her grip tightening on her sword of light. The monster's smaller forms admit that she is not just all talk, acknowledging her immense power. She assures Del she can handle this alone, as she has always done in the past, but he clenches his fist, determined not to let her face this dangerous enemy by herself. She apologizes and warns him that this could be a prolonged battle, asking him to step back for his own safety. But instead of retreating, he calls out to his Fire Lord companion, a shadow covering his determined face. A massive fiery lion erupts behind him, its powerful roar echoing through the grand hall. So the Fire Lord exclaims that it has been waiting for its turn to finally join the fight. The holy woman looks on in complete shock, stunned by the sudden appearance of the powerful entity. The slime monster also recognizes the fire god, calling it foolish for revealing itself so openly. The saintess turns to Del, asking him why he would hide such a powerful being from her. He smiles and tells her that he trusts her, and as her knight, he should keep no secrets. She is left speechless, her eyes wide with a mix of surprise and a newfound respect for him. With the fiery lion behind them, he reminds her that for today, they are not alone in this fight. Together they launch combined attack, a wave of purifying fire meeting the dark miasma head-on. The monster taunts them, questioning if the fire god will truly fight when even the holy woman's light is ineffective. The Fire Lord simply bares its teeth, a low growl rumbling in its chest as it prepares for battle. And so, the creature boasts that it will be a great achievement to capture both of them here and now. And so Del steps in front of the holy woman, asking her to leave this fight to him and his companion. He knows that if he doesn't get angry now, he will lose his nerve against the monster's overwhelming rage, and the slime monster laughs, mocking the fire god for being nothing more than burning embers now. It scoffs at the display, confident that the weakened god poses no real threat to its power. Del leaps into the air, unleashing a massive wave of purifying flame down upon the creature, and smaller slime monsters try to shield themselves, but the intense heat begins to overwhelm them, and so the main creature taunts them, saying it's useless to cut it because it just reconnects right away. It then fires a small blast of purifying flame back, surprising the young knight with its own power. The monster is shocked as the flame hits one of its own eyes, the purifying fire spreading quickly. It cries out in pain as the flames on the cut surface won't die, the miasma itself now burning away. Del and his companion laugh, asking where the creature's swagger has gone as they vow to burn it to ash. The young knight tells the holy woman that their flame seems to have excellent compatibility with the monster. She watches in awe, realizing the fire god has a purification power different from Lorite Sama's light. The monster roars that it's just a bluff, confident that the flames can't burn up the larger chunks of its body, so it decides to sever the burning parts, believing there will be no problem if it gets rid of the smaller pieces. And Del notes that the creature uses its head more than he expected, realizing it's a smarter foe than it appears, and the saintess then asks him a strange question, wondering if he knows how to cook. She recalls a time long ago when her own cooking specialty was one simple thing. Her technique was to cut and burn, which gives Del an idea of his own. Realizing what she means, he says that if it's just cutting and burning, then he can do it too. The monster realizes they both have countermeasures and declares that playtime is over, summoning a horde of smaller creatures. The holy woman simply smiles and says it's time to begin cooking, ready to face the final assault. The slime monster calls them fools, its smaller forms breaking apart into various shapes as it prepares a new attack. Del's flaming sword effortlessly shatters the miasma, the purifying fire proving to be incredibly effective. One after another, the small creatures are purified by the combined power of the holy woman and the fire god. The saintess declares that all the small fry have been cleaned up, leaving only the main body, and she leaps into the air, her sword of light aimed directly at the large monster, ready to end the fight. The creature screams for her to stop, its confident demeanor gone as it faces the overwhelming attack. As the light hits, the monster's body seems to dissolve, its eyes turning into X as it is defeated. But the holy woman realizes she fell right into a trap, her victory turning into a moment of panic. A hand made of miasma erupts from the cracks in the floor, grabbing her from behind in a surprise attack, and she is shocked, realizing the creature had hidden parts of its body within the floor of the grand hall, and she is now caught in a pincer attack, with the main body above and the hidden parts below. Trapped and unable to block both attacks at once, the holy woman is left completely vulnerable, and the monster roars for her to be crushed, but Del shouts her name, refusing to let her be defeated. His sword, still glowing with a faint orange light, deflects a projectile aimed at the saintess. He tells her that he will take the top, and she agrees, trusting him to handle the threat from above. They move in perfect sync, a whirlwind of light and fire as they face the two-fronted assault, and the slime monster cries out in shock, unable to comprehend their coordinated and powerful counterattack. And so the holy woman thanks him, declaring they will fight together until the very end of this battle. The creature is in disbelief, wondering why it is being overwhelmed when it should be able to win 1-1-1. Its body is pierced by multiple beams of light and fire, unable to regenerate from the combined assault. Their combined attack creates a massive explosion of light and fire, completely engulfing the slime monster. The holy woman struggles against the intense power, the force of the blast pushing her back. AG, back in its small form, laughs maniacally at the defeated monster, asking how it feels to be roasted. The saintess finally confirms that Del is the heretic she has been searching for all along. He isn't surprised, admitting that he expected her to realize it after he used so much power publicly. She explains that she arranged for them to be alone for this final confirmation of his identity, and she understands why he would hide his identity from her, as she is a high-ranking member of the church, and she also admits that if their positions were reversed, she would never trust the holy woman either. He agrees, saying he was thinking the same thing, but his expression shows there's more to it. Seeing her fight alone, he realized he couldn't just stand by, and it changed his mind about trusting her. The holy woman is taken aback by his sudden and heartfelt confession, her eyes wide with surprise. He explains that he finally understands the feelings of those who have supported him, like his sister. He realizes now that by only thinking of himself, he couldn't see the feelings of his family. With a bright and honest smile, he tells her that he simply can't leave her to fight alone. He wants to believe in her and help however he can, a decision he made on a whim after seeing her eyes, and she calls his reasoning half-hearted and says she would prefer he not get involved with her like this. He is taken aback by her harsh words, immediately apologizing for going too far with his offer. But she smiles, admitting that because he's only her knight for a day, she's beginning to want him to stay forever. He is left completely speechless, his cheeks blushing at her unexpected and flirtatious comment. She quickly changes the subject, suggesting they talk later as the attacker may have accomplices nearby. Del urgently tells the holy woman that he's worried about the Great Seal of Light and asks for her strength. The scene shifts to the underground chamber where a corrupted sword is embedded in a stone, guarding the seal. The defeated guard struggles to his feet, cursing the loss of the miasma he spent 10 years refining. He vows to repay the debt, his gaze fixed on the broken pieces of his helmet on the floor. And for now, he decides to follow the guide's orders and focus on destroying the Great Seal of Light. And he believes that if the seal is destroyed, all life essence will be inverted to miasma, bringing back the underworld king. But a small, purple-haired girl appears behind him, telling him that losers should accept defeat gracefully. And he is shocked to see her, believing he had already removed her from the academy and questioning why she is here. With a swift motion, she strikes him with her staff, knocking him back before he can react. And she smiles and explains that supporting students who did their best is part of the academy principal's important job.